You are listening to Jeff Lazarson's Mortgage Grader radio show. And now I'm going to get right to my guest. I am honored here to have in studio Mr. John Burns. So John is the CEO of Irvine-based John Burns Consulting. John has a bachelor's degree in economics from Stanford University, smart dude, and an MBA from UCLA. And I would also add, John, that my good friend Andrew Corey at the Los Angeles Times wrote a really beautiful article about you it was like May of 2017. And out there in listener land, if you want to look it up, it's impressive. The title of the article is John Burns, Real Estate Guru, Joined the Industry by Accident. So Google that and read up on him. And can you just start off by telling me, how did you join the industry by accident?
After graduate school, I went to work for a consulting firm, and I was there for 2 months, and they reorganized the company by industry, and my boss picked real estate, so I ended up in real estate. And you mentioned I went to UCLA grad school. They've got a great real estate program. I didn't take any classes, so I had to learn them all later, but I figured it out now, I think.
Really? Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So, all right, so the hot topic is mortgage interest rates. So what's your crystal ball looking like?
Well, that you can actually go into the bond market and see what the bond market's crystal ball is, and that's what we do, because those are professionals that are being paid millions and probably billions if you add it up to figure it out. And they think that the 10-year Treasury will rise about 50 basis points over the next 3 years, and mortgages are based usually on the 10-year Treasury, so we're forecasting that mortgages will go up 50 basis points in the next few years.
So what about the inverted yield curve? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a rule of thumb. Basically what that means is when the yield curve gets inverted, the bond market is saying, hey, we think a recession's on the way. And it's getting close. And I do think the consensus is that the recession is, in fact, there's a lot of surveys saying the consensus is about 2 years out. So that the bond market is saying that's the consensus. One thing I might mention, because we do a lot of consumer research, that young buyers think a recession means a complete housing debacle, because the last recession was a complete housing debacle.
It's a good point that you bring up, John. I have had so many people post the Great Recession that we had, which was really, in my view, a depression, but they called it the Great Recession. So many people were fearful of buying because they watched their parents lose their houses. I mean, millions of Americans lost their homes and equity, and it just messed up, their sense of family and everything, and it was horrible. So those scars are real, and it's a good point that you make about that.
Yeah, and then the reason I wanted to bring that up is that that was the worst recession in 80 years. If you go back to the prior recession in 2000. Yeah, it was bad, but it was not nearly as bad as that. So I think that's a more typical recession. So when people say the word recession, people think, oh my God, that means home prices are going to fall 30% again. That's not always the case.
Okay, so let's talk next about market timing. If somebody out there is thinking about purchasing, whether it's a first-time buyer or a move-up buyer or even an investor, you're the guru, according to the LA Times. So what about market timing?
The first thing you should know about market timing is you can't. So
nice.
Yeah. So, but you can understand the risk, and we have a lot of data that we analyze, and clearly the Orange County housing market is looking very frothy right now, and we say that there is a lot of risk, just because home prices and mortgage payments have risen so much faster than incomes. And there's good reasons for that. The demand has been really strong. The economy has been strong. We're building next to nothing. The Fed has been dropping interest rates for the most part, except for the last 2 or 3 years, and prices have gone through the roof. So I do think the next recession could have some home price declines in it because it's gotten too frothy. That said, if you're somebody who's going to be in Orange County for the rest of your life, like I bought my first home in 1990 here in Orange County, and we lost money during that recession, but we bought our next home for less than we would have paid otherwise. We got in, 28 years later, our mortgage is paid off. If you're that type of a person, don't bother timing the market. Just get in. But if you're somebody who thinks you're going to be relocating in 3 years, you are timing the market, and you're taking more risk.
This is Jeff Lazarson's Mortgage Grader radio show on AM 830. You're listening to John Burns talking about market timing. So John, next question for you is, let's talk school districts. So very interesting and a big question that there are school districts throughout LA, Orange County, San Diego. I hear it all the time from my clients about, I got to get into XYZ school district. And how much more do you think people pay for the hot top school district?
Well, we live in Irvine, and we paid a big premium to be in Irvine, which has got great schools. And I should mention, we've got 16 offices around the country and 70 people, but we see this everywhere. Is everybody believes that the great school districts are going to hold up well in value, and there is a lot of truth to that. But remember, you're paying for that when you get in. And we've got a number of employees in our office right now who are saying, I'd like to be in the best school district, but I'm going to buy in the next best school district because it's 20% cheaper. And, and the school they're going to is rated a 8 on a scale of 1 to 10 and not a 10, but you're getting a better deal. And
what about, somebody is their kids go to private schools, right? Then
that's a no-brainer. But the other thing, and the reason you and I were talking about this ahead of time, is more than half of households today don't have kids. So
really?
Yes. So
that blows my mind. Really?
Well, do you have kids in the house?
I do.
Okay.
Well, sort of. I mean, sort of. They're sort of.
You got adult kids in the house.
Yeah. Well, but he's saving up to buy a house. He came back from college and he's saving up.
Right, but you don't need the schools.
Right.
Because he's out of school. So a lot of people are in that situation, and they still believe, well, I need to buy a home or in the best school district because that holds a resale value. Well, if you're going to, now's actually a great time to sell a home and buy something smaller. And if you're in that situation, to pull some cash out of your house, and going to a great place in Orange County with not the best schools, actually, I think is a good move.
But if you go and sell your property now, especially as things are now, prices are rising still, right? In most areas, and we're talking about market timing. Is this a time you should be selling, do you think?
Well, I don't think you're timing the market if you're buying and selling at the same time. You're just changing your lifestyle, and that's how I've looked at it my entire life.
And I have clients that what they'll do is they'll time the market. They'll try to sell at the top, and then they'll wait some years before they buy again. And I've had a few people that did it. They timed it, not many, but I had a few during the Great Recession that saw it coming and stopped and bought later.
And I have a friend who thought he was smart enough to do that too, and he ended up renting for 5 years and then getting back into the market at a more expensive time. So you just never know.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk new homes versus resale.
Yeah, so there's been some interesting changes in the industry over the last 10 years, the biggest of which is technology and the smartphone. And everybody's home shopping these days with their cell phones. And the great apps out there were built by companies that are tied into the resale market and giving you access to MLS and giving you great information. And the home builders, I think, have struggled with that because you can go on your phone right now and get a real address, a real price. Frankly, you can take a tour of the house with the videos and even some virtual reality now. And in a new home that's not yet finished, you can't do that. And they say, starting from $700,000. So I think people aren't looking at new as much as they used to because it's not as easy to do in their cell phone. And I think there's some pretty good deals in the new. So I just wanted to remind people, don't forget to look at those. You may have to Google it or look a little harder in your smartphone.
Are most new areas still nailing people with those extra assessments, those what we used to call Melrose taxes? Is that still prevalent out there?
Yes, yeah, it is. But that's been going on for so long. Most resale homes have those now too. So,
well, I don't know that I agree with that. Not recent. No.
Well, Melrose bonds are 25-year bonds.
Right.
So most homes built in the last 20 years have a Melrose assessment. Now it may be $300 a month instead of $600 a month, but they're still there.
And so, somebody that is buying new, a couple other things that people should be leery of or warned about with new stuff is when you said it yourself a minute ago about starting at the bumps in the pricing for the upgrades and the improvement can just get eye-popping. I see it all the time with my clients. The other thing that builders tend to do, which I don't like one bit, is that they'll give you this incentive about the mortgage. They'll say, if you use our inside mortgage company, we're going to give you a $5,000 or $10,000 credit toward your upgrades. But what they don't tell them is that it's so inflated that the home buyer is better off buying the house as raw as possible and then doing their own improvements afterwards. At least that's my thinking. What, you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I would disagree with a lot of that. First of all, if it's some permanent improvements to the house that you can get into the appraisal, you can get it financed versus paying all cash afterwards. And, hopefully they're not trying to put somebody into a more expensive mortgage than you are. That would be unethical. It's not unethical.
They do it for a profit margin. That's why they're doing it.
Well, they're trying to take the profit that you're trying to take, so you're competing with them.
Yeah, but I'm a normal profit.
Well, I think they compete pretty heavy with each other. What I hear from them is the main reason they like to do that is they like to be able to control the escrow process. And so often something goes haywire with a mortgage company during the escrow process, they can get it into their own escrow company or their own mortgage company.
That's actually a very fair point because, mortgage companies are very uneven and you don't know what you're dealing with, one way or the other. This is Jeff Lazarson's Mortgage Grader Radio Show on AM 830. You are listening to John Burns. So, John, down payments. What should somebody be saving up for 20% down payment?
Well, I'm amazed how many people think they need 20%. In fact, there was just an article on CNBC yesterday talking about how long it takes to save a 20% down payment, as if that's what most people do. 56% of all mortgages today are 10% down or less. The government in fact, presidential appointees now set policy on 70% of all the mortgages in the country, and they are FHA is what, 24% of the market now? It used to be 4%. FHA has the 3.5 down, the 5% down, and they go lower on the FICO score.
But that's national numbers, not local numbers.
No, those are national numbers. I think I work nationally, so I know those. Locally, I think you need to be below 636 or something like that, so it's not half.
So the issue about saving up for a down payment or not, there's a lot of ways to get money. You can get a gift from your folks. You can borrow money from your retirement account. You can pool money with other people to buy stuff. And what you say is a great point. The longer somebody waits, especially with rents in general, are very high, and that's around the country, not just here, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so the amount of money that you're spending on rents, and you don't get any equity or ownership or appreciation in it, you're probably better off doing your own thing sooner than later. Last question for you is, my next guest on the show is going to be Jeff Collins from the Orange County Register, who I know you know well. He's going to be talking about rent control from a reporter standpoint, not from a columnist standpoint. So he's not going to give me his opinion. So what's your opinion about rent control in California, the hot topic?
Yeah, I think people need to look deeper into than just the headline, which is just kind of like, well, rent control sounds like a great thing because it's really evil to raise rents on people. You need to think about these properties over a 20 or 30-year period. If the landlord's not raising rents, but his expenses to maintain the property are going up, what's he going to do? He's going to stop maintaining the property. So one of the things I think people need to think about is what this is going to look like over 20 or 30 years, and you want to make sure you don't create an eyesore. A lot of old rent control apartments are eyesores.
Interesting stuff. And any last pearls of wisdom that you have for my audience?
Actually, I'll give a plug for the home builders. They need some labor in a big way. So if anybody wants to work construction, give them a call.
Okay. John Burns, real estate consultant. It's really my honor to meet you for the first time in person. I hope that you come back to my show another time, and have a great rest of your day. This is Jeff Lazarson's Mortgage Grader Radio Show on AM 830.